cool. Yeah, I just like to look at it later.
Yeah.
I want to see how the lighting works from the other side, see how people are seeing it.
Love it.
So I started producing. I came to Chicago. I've done a lot of, a little bit of everything. Narrative features. I've done local magazine TV shows. I produced 2 seasons of that with Chicago Bears and local restaurants. Done 4 features now, 4 narrative features. My most recent one's out on Amazon, just came out this year. Amazon, it's called Moving Parts. It's about a young woman who was smuggled from China to Trinidad, and it's a pretty rough situation for her there. I'll leave it at that. It's a heavy movie, just a heads up. But yeah, you can find it on Amazon right now. And do documentary work. Yeah, I'm all over the place. I've got a production company, Orange Chair Productions. And one of the things I love about the film world is that there's just so many different things that interest me. I don't limit myself. I think some people are like, this is what I'm going to do my whole career. And I love that. I work with a lot of those people, and they bring an attention to detail that elevates projects. And then there are those of us who are kind of moving between genres. So I've done commercial work, I've done corporate work, documentary. I've got a documentary that's would be available in festivals right now. It's kind of a weird time for film festivals. It just did its first online festival. I've got a docu-series that we're pitching right now. We'll see where that goes. And then another narrative film in development. So yeah, I'm all over the place.
Thanks, John.
0 budget films to, I wouldn't say high budget films, but independent, decent budgeted films.
Great.
Yeah.
What sparked this session is, one, the president of Universal Pictures said, if you're home during quarantine and you're not making films, you're missing an opportunity. And I know we have limited equipment, limited resources. Whenever I see you on campus, you do a great job with lighting, explaining it. We have all these tools, but at home we really don't have it. So I was hoping if you could give some tips and advice, and really participants. We have a good group here. We have a lot of aspiring filmmakers. This is an opportunity for you to ask whatever question you want. The reason I asked John to be here, he doesn't have a filter. Ask him questions about teaching. You're going to school in the fall or summer, what his approach is, or just about the industry. Honestly, he has a wealth of knowledge. But John, if you want to kick things off, I'll fill you in when we get some questions. But
sure.
How do I play with lighting at home?
As Brad said, guys, ask me anything. We're here to talk about lighting, and I'm going to show you some lighting. And it's going to be kind of, whenever I do cinematography, I split it between, I like to say, there's the aesthetic and philosophical approach to lighting, and then there's the technical, approach to lighting and camera work. And they're very closely related, but they're separate. So, the first thing I would just say, and I've been encouraging my students to do this, and to Brad's point, we had some amazing documentaries come out of doc class. Brad, I'll get you some links to those so you can share them with prospective students. I'm really pleased with the work they did in quarantine. Staying at home for the most part did really impressive work. They weren't limited by their situation, or they were limited, but they used those limitations to their advantage and made really cool stuff. So yeah, anyways. But, I always break it down there's aesthetic and there's technical. And the first step is what kind of story are you trying to tell? What is this about? And then what tools do you have at your disposal? And let's get creative, So what I did, I have a lot of tools here at my studio, and I was like, nah, I'm only going to use stuff that you guys have. So I got a cell phone here. I moved around the house. I looked at the lighting, and just grab some stuff off the shelf that you might find in a lot of people's homes. So yeah, the first and most important weapon I have at my disposal is just my brain. Where am I going to shoot something that's going to look good? It's not an accident that I'm sitting over here by this window. The most powerful source of light I have is the sun. To ignore the sunlight is kind of silly, or to fight with the sunlight is kind of silly. So the first step I would do is like examine your situation and look at what things you have available to you. And you know, the sun coming in through different windows is a really huge and valuable thing. So I chose this spot because normally this time of day we'd have some direct sunlight coming in this window, and it would come in from right over here and kind of come through. I'm not sure if it's going to peek out from the clouds today or not, but what you can see is I've got this nice soft light, right? And these are pretty big windows I'm sitting next to, but I made sure that I, as the subject, am placed where the lights are in front of me. So they're kind of coming in from the side, but there's enough that there's wrap coming around. It's kind of interesting. The next thing I would point out is, you guys, if you can, how many of you are using cell phones to document things? I don't know if you have a way to poll people at all.
Yeah, if you guys just want to throw in the chat, how many of you have been filming with your cell phones?
Or iPads or whatever,
Yeah.
Maybe DSLRs sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, it's really important, whatever tool you're using, make sure that you're controlling the exposure. Like right now, this is all blown out, you know? So the question I would have is like, well, if I try to expose for that window, then I'm gonna be too dark, right? So right now, my camera, which is a cell phone, and I have no control over it on Zoom, is just kind of balancing for that. But one of the things that most houses have at their disposal, Annabelle, you want to climb up there and pull the curtain down? Is we can start manipulating the curtains and blinds. Like, honestly, this is one of the most valuable things you can do, is like, just see what happens if we close some of this down a little bit. So now I'm still getting a lot of this light that I liked, and now I've kind of brought it down a little bit. I'm softening it. It's not quite as blown out. And yeah, do I want to be sitting necessarily right next to this? Probably not. Maybe I'll move over here a little bit, you know? But now I've got some nice soft light, and the light is falling off behind me. So my background, which is super boring, by the way, that's another thing. Like, pick good spots to shoot because of windows. But then what we see in the background, yeah, Brad takes the prize for like least interesting background.
My wife has first pick.
This is a pretty boring background right here. This is not a great place for me to shoot. Now this gives me a little bit of texture, and I call this like garage door lighting. So if you guys have ever been inside your garage and you open up the door, soft light kind of comes in, but as you get deeper into the garage, it gets darker. So where I am is, you know, a stop or two brighter than the background, and that's kind of a pleasing, soft look. Does that mean that this is what I need? Again, somebody pointed out, it just depends on the script. But if I was just trying to get an attractive look on somebody's face, this is a nice look. The lighting is not too front heavy. You know, I'm not just banging a light in my face. Got this nice soft light coming in, got a little texture. You know, are there things we could do to spice it up? I think so. So I'm gonna have Annabelle sit where I am, and I'm gonna get on the other side. We're gonna test this out, guys. So just roll with me.
Love it.
Let's see. Can I switch? Yeah. Boom. All right. So now I'm behind the camera. Which
John,
is
you're behind the camera. Annabelle, you look amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, that's nice. She did spend some time on this outfit, so she did.
I don't get dressed up that much in quarantine, so it's nice when I am able to do that.
Yeah, it's good to have an excuse
It's
to do
fun.
that. So guys, I'm gonna pull out a couple of really, really basic tools I have. And the first one, I know this is a lighting thing, but the first one is not even a light yet. It's a white card. So it's not, you look at it, you're like, oh, it's just a big white piece of foam board. It's not particularly exciting. You can buy this at any like Walgreens, you know, or art supply store. But what we use this for is to bounce light. So I'm gonna pull the curtain back just a little bit because I need some light to bounce. Pull it back a little harder. Got it? Good job. All right, that's good, perfect. And just sit right on the edge there. So here we go. I've got my close up, but let's say it's a little too moody, right? So I come in with a bounce card and I just fill in that light a little bit. So what you do with the bounce card is get the light just outside of the shot, but you can see it filled in the shadows on this side of her face, right? So if I move it away, See how it gets darker and contrastier? Come back in. I mean, if this is like lighting 101, but if you want a pleasing look, I mean, she's cute and has good skin because she's young, right? But the reality is lighting helps. And this is moodier than this. Neither one is good or bad, but they're different, right? It's a different approach. So this is a little bit less contrasty, a little bit more pleasing. We're filling in some of the shadows. So that's just something to start with. I'm going to pull out another tool here. That I like
Hold
to
on,
use.
John. We have a question coming in from Dorian. Go ahead, Dorian.
How come you hold the white card at the bottom and not like the top?
Oh, that's a good
How do you
question.
know where to place it? I guess is my question.
Well, what we do is there's a term called Hollywooding, and this is where you basically make people you make people hold lights or bounce. We call that bounce, or another word for it is a passive fill. And when we Hollywood stuff, we just kind of move it around till it looks good, you know. So I could put it a variety of different places. And there's really no right or wrong answer. It's just what looks good to you. So the light is coming down through the window, right here, coming across. So I was just trying to catch the angle of light where I get the most response, you know? Because if I put it here, it fills in the shadow. But if I put it up here, what happens is I'm not getting as much light reflecting. So it's doing a little something, but it's not doing very much above her, you know? But good question. Any of you guys play pool? Does anybody play pool in here? Yeah?
Yep.
So light works a lot like a ball. When you hit a ball off a wall, it bounces back at they call it angle of incident is angle of return. So if you hit it and it hits a wall at 30 degrees, it's going to come off the wall at 30 degrees the opposite way. So light is the same way. So we've got to kind of get under the light, which is coming from above. So here's my next tool. Annabelle, you want to hold that? This is like a super simple work light or a clamp light. All right. And this is like $2. You can find this all over the place. You can order one on Amazon if you don't have one. You might have one in the basement. And I put a CFL in there. So just a cheap compact fluorescent bulb that I had laying around the house. Right. So what I like about this is I can clamp this guy anywhere. You can crush your head. I can put this thing anywhere. Right. And so even if I don't have light stands, I can still use this guy. And it puts out a pretty good amount of light. Now, one of the things you'll notice, she's not going to love this, because the problem with lighting is as soon as you add a light, it looks like you added a light, right? Like it's really obviously like I have aimed a light at her. And depending on where I aim the light on her, I'm going to get some weird shadows. And this is one of the most common problems I see is people set up a light and they aim it at their actor. So first off, actors don't like having lights aimed at their face, right? Second off, I get a big shadow in the background that looks bad. And if you notice that shadow, there's actually two colors back there. The wall is kind of orange now, and the shadow is kind of blue. And the problem with that is I'm doing what's called mixing color temperatures. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the daylight coming in is kind of blue, and this is more in the warm spectrum. And so then your camera or your phone has to try and figure out which color is which. So just be conscious, you can get daylight CFLs. This happens to be a warmer or tungsten CFL. So I'm not saying to just get lights and aim them at people, because again, I think that's not a great look. If you are gonna do it, put the light above your subject so that she's looking here. And now it's kind of warming her. It's definitely brought her out even more than before, right? And because it's a little bit warmer light, it's bringing out the rosy complexion, her rosy complexion a little bit, right? Now, if I use my card, in addition to this, I'm going to get even more of an effect. So she's getting some of that light from above, and then I'm using my bounce card to reflect both the light coming in the window and up there. So this is a little bit more dramatic and stylized than without it. Absolutely. I see Marcelo. I'm sorry, guys. I'm looking at my phone, so it's hard for me to read everybody's name.
I
But
was
yeah.
just waiting for you to stop. That's Marcello. Can't you bounce it off the wall too for soft?
Absolutely. Yeah, so she's not really by a wall, but I could bounce it off. I guess I could bounce it off this wall, and it kind of looks like she's sitting next to something glowing. Just kind of a weird look. The other thing is I could bounce it off the ceiling, and that's a great trick if you're just trying to bring up the overall ambience in a room. But if you see, there's not a ton, because my main source of light right now is daylight. This light's not doing a whole lot. So I just turned it off, turn it back on. So it fills in the shadows a little bit. It warms it up a little bit. And that's just like, I call that ambient light. And when you turn a light on or off, you're auditioning it. So this is on, this is off. So yeah, great question, Marcello. I would say the wall is a nice thing to bounce light off of. I also like bouncing light off the ceiling. The ceiling is almost always white, so you're not picking up any of the color. And you get the added benefit of light coming from above and just kind of spreading everywhere. But it is a little bit more, you know what, Annabelle, can you scoot over to your left just a little bit? Thank you. I'm gonna lose this curtain, and we're just gonna take a look at what it would be like if there was less sun. Can you pull that pillow out of there? Great. So we're just gonna block this off a little bit more, right? So now she's a little bit darker. And again, everything's just kind of auto exposuring, setting itself. And now I've got probably a pretty dark room.
That's really dark.
Probably not looking great, but just again, for that dramatic look, you know, this looks more like a nighttime look. And if I wanted to close off these curtains and light it, it looks like maybe a table lamp or something like that. And to Marcello's point, if I don't want to aim it at her, I can aim it at the curtain, and the curtain itself now becomes like a bounce, right? Or, and this is something we do all the time, is I'll aim the light at the bounce card. And so now I'm holding the bounce card above her. Somebody mentioned that earlier. Now the bounce card is my source of illumination. I'm not aiming the light at her at all. That's just light coming in off the bounce card. And I can move it around. So we've got this look. I can go up. With this look, I can switch over to this side. And you can see the shadows moving around. And I can control it however I want. She could be looking at her iPad or a computer or something below her, right? So now the bounce is below her and the light's coming up at her. So anyways.
When you have,
was there another question?
Question, I think.
Yep. Go ahead, Dorian.
when you have the light coming from below her, do you have the bounce card below, or do you have the actual light itself?
Good question. So this is the light itself, right? And it's kind of bright and it's making a weird shadow. And then this is with the bounce card. And I'm just aiming the light at the bounce card. So it's a little bit softer light. And again, I'm just kind of rigging this. I don't have the proper equipment, but that's okay. You can get a lot of really cool looks just like this, you know? I could make it, I could flicker. She's in front of a campfire, you know, pretend the room is dark.
Are you just flickering with the card going back and forth?
I'm
No,
literally,
moving the light.
I'm literally shaking the light. That's all I'm doing. Yep, I'm just holding it. But again, this cool guy, this cool light, if I want to have this so I don't have to hold it, so you guys can see what I'm doing, here is the light. And I just mounted it to a chair. It's another thing I love about these clamp lights. You just mount it to whatever you find nearby. So I just grab a chair and then I aim it down at the bounce board, which is right below her, and back up here. Now, I will say we're getting a little bit of a flare in the bottom left-hand corner here. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Now, some people don't like flares. Other people think flares are kind of cool.
J.J.
I think,
Abrams.
yeah, well, it's a choice, you know? I mean, everything in cinematography, if you're gonna make a TV show, or if you're gonna do like the news, the 5 o'clock news, which I'm sure all of you guys watch, because I know I do, then you just light it right, whatever right means. I don't worry about lighting it right. I worry about lighting something so that it feels a certain way. You know, how does it feel to me? So we've got this weird kind of light below her right now. It's doing something. So I want to add another light. And this is a light that you guys might have in your house too. Just another kind of.
John, you can get these at hardware stores, yeah?
Oh yeah, man, and they're cheap. This thing is probably like $2 or $3, and it came with like a 20-foot cord. Nice. So this is just a hook with a light in it. And so now, I probably should have thought about where the outlets were before I started doing this. There we go. Always know where your outlets are, guys.
We do classes in pre-production, so don't worry.
So instead of using this little clamp light I have to bounce light off of, I'm going to use this hook light. No, maybe I'll use the clamp light. And then I'm going to bring the hook light around behind her. Right? So I could do a couple things. I can aim it at the wall just to give kind of an interesting pattern or light on the wall. I don't know what that looks like. I'm not going to assume it's looking real good. But let's see. Let's frame up a little bit. So now we got kind of some interesting things going on. This is what might be called like cross lighting. So I've got a big main source coming in over here, right? And then I've got this little bounce light coming up from below. Why don't you hold on to your iPad like you're looking at it, but just keep it low out of frame. Yeah, so she's looking at an iPad maybe, right, doing something. So that's why there's light coming up from below. And now I've got this light in the background. I don't really love what that's doing. Maybe I'll move it around a little bit. I don't know. What do you guys think? So instead of lighting her, I want to light the background. Yeah, it's not doing a ton. And that may be, again, I think the wattage of this bulb is just not great. So maybe this one would be a better one to have as my bounce light. So I'm going to hook it onto my bounce down here.
John, as you're hooking it, what are some of the biggest pet peeves you have when it comes to students and lighting? Things you've noticed?
Things I've noticed. It's a good question, Brad. Well, students aiming lights directly at people, I think is generally doesn't work that well. You know, I just think in general, if I can avoid aiming lights directly at people, I'm going to be a lot better off. So you aim lights indirectly. You use bounce, you aim it at the wall, you aim it at the ceiling, you aim it kind of anywhere but directly at people. I got asked that question. I was on a panel with some cinematographers a few years ago, and somebody was like, where do you put the light? And the question was anywhere that's not aimed directly at the actor. And away from camera, ideally. So now I'm using this light as a backlight. It's not a backlight for her necessarily. It's just to break up the background, you know? Like, I'm not super worried about lighting the back of her. So giving her hair a little highlight's not a terrible thing. So it's giving her hair a little bit of a highlight. It's breaking up the background. I don't know what that is back there. It's a table lamp. It could be anything. I don't know. But I want to move around to some other locations. So I kind of scoped out my house. I was like, where can we go that's going to have a cool look to it? Do you guys have any questions before we switch it up?
Dorian, go ahead.
So the cross lighting, is it always behind the subject and below, or is it just having like two lights in different directions?
Yeah, I just got rid of the light below. So now this is cross-keyed. Cross-key is a term that you might use when you're lighting two people. But basically the idea is, like, my key is my main source of light, and that's this blue light coming in the window. And then I've got a light on the opposite side of her. Does that answer? What was your question? I'm sorry. You asked a good question and I muddled the answer there.
Yeah, so is cross lighting like lighting the back and the bottom, or is it just two different like directions of lighting?
It's not about the top and the bottom. It's about one light in front and off to one side, and then another light behind them on the opposite side. And if I was lighting two people, let's say, for instance, I can do this. So Annabelle, can you face that way, please? So right now, Annabelle is she's backlit by, scoot back just a little bit. She's backlit by the window. Scoot back right here. Yep, it's close to the window. So mostly she's being lit right now. That's too far. Well, that's all right. You're fine. So right now, she's mostly being lit, right, by this light behind her. And then there's this other light in front of her. So she's kind of silhouetted a little bit. Now what I'm gonna do is take this light that's over here and I'm gonna move it around. And now this light is in front of her. It's lighting her. And it's gonna be lighting, theoretically, the back of me. I can't see what I'm doing, guys, so you guys are gonna have to tell me, am I in the frame?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a blue soft light on me, and she's got a warm hard light on her. So this is another version of cross lighting. This is a cross lighting for a conversation. So this is a way of like doubling up. Instead of using 4 lights to get this look, a backlight, a key, a backlight for her, I'm using her key, right, which I keep hitting with my hand, as my backlight or edge light, 3/4 edge light, and my key is her backlight. So I'm using 2 lights, but I'm getting the result of 4 different things, you know? The big problem here is I gotta be careful. If I move over, I'll start to block her light.
So,
right?
John, we had a question. How would you define just a backlight? Is it simply just a light that's behind somebody?
Yeah, it's a light that hits the back of them. So another thing people used to call it was a hair light, and that's generally like a really high backlight because it gives your hair this shine, right? And another thing it does is it separates people from the background. So Annabelle, come sit over on this side of the, come sit around on this side.
Where?
Sit here and face back.
Okay.
So if you come this way a little bit, scoot this way a little bit. Great. So this, see how it's aimed at her hair? Annabelle, scoot even more to your right. See how her hair is like glowing? So that's like a hair light from below. But a backlight, what it does, it gives a nice clear separation of her from the background. So if I turn that light off, she kind of blends into the background, which is more natural looking, but there might be a reason that we really want to edge her out of the background. And yeah, so we do. So a backlight or a hair light are kind of the same things. Oftentimes hair lights come even higher, but I don't have the right gear here. Well, maybe.
Great. And John, key light. Quick definition of key light.
A key light is our main source of light.
Okay.
So right now, our main source of light, and it's really, you know, the best source of light when you have it available is the sun. So right now, our key light is the sun. So here, what I've done is now I've made it a little bit more of a true like backlight or hair light. And so we're getting, see how it's hitting the top of her hair? And if we were, you know, shooting this traditionally, I'd probably do one of these, get an actual close up, you know? And because the light's high, we don't see it, though the cable's not hid very well. I guess I could get over here, lose that. So this is like,
I do want to give you 15-minute warning. You could definitely go longer if you want, but I didn't want to overtake your whole afternoon.
Well, this is what happens, guys, when we start lighting. Because you start fiddling with stuff, and you always ask a cinematographer, how long is it going to take you to light the scene? And their answer will always be, how much time do I have? Because you can just keep playing and playing and playing, and it's just like the time flies by. So why don't we jump off? I'll take the tripod with me. I'm going to turn off these lights. I just want to show you guys a couple of other situations. Well, and that's the point. That's very sweet of you to say she looks like an angel, but part of that is that hair light, right? Because if I turn this hair light off, guys, it's not a bad look, but it definitely...
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But you know what I mean? She just kind of blends back there, and it's a different aesthetic. So let's go check out some other lighting situations.
So John, as you're moving, Marcello asked another great question. How much
Sure.
of this can we clean up in post-production? How much does lighting and post kind of talk?
So here's the thing. If you're shooting with a professional camera, you've got more flexibility, but you can't fix lighting really in post. I can change the color of light and I can increase the contrast and do a few things, but I can't really fix something that's poorly lit because I don't know. We just did color correction in advanced cinematography class, or not color correction, color grading, I guess would be the proper term. And it's amazing what you can do with professional footage, but you're still limited. If it's black and there's no information, you can't do anything. If it's white like this behind me, you can't fix that.
Yeah.
There's nothing there to bring back in post. And unfortunately, like if I shot this like this, how you guys see me right now, and I'm like, oh, but I want there to be a light behind him. You can't add a light behind me in post, So, Annabelle, why don't you sit over here in this rocking chair?
Okay.
So this is just another example, and if you guys have this opportunity, this is called northern exposure. And northern exposure is just soft light that's coming from a window facing north. So be conscious of where your light is coming from, because even when you've got a really, really bright light source like the sun, if you're on the north side of a building, the soft light will be coming in reflecting off other things. The sunlight will not come, unless you're in the southern hemisphere. So if any of you are in the southern hemisphere, you might get a little bit of light in the north side of your house, but predominantly in North America, light is on the south side of our house, sometimes on the east, sometimes on the west. So really think about the time of day. But what's nice about northern exposure, and this is why some of the most famous artists in the world, Rembrandt and Van Gogh and some of these guys, would paint with a studio that had windows facing north to get this really nice, soft northern exposure. And then here's another example. Unlike the last room, can you stop rocking for a second? Is there's texture in the background, And I think, I'm not trying to blow my own horn that it looks really cool, but having some color and some texture in the background, she really pops out of there, So she looks very different than what's behind her. You can't go wrong with throwing a plant in a shot for production design, because we don't have any green in our skin tones or our hair, and very rarely in our clothes. So green will really pop, and it accents the natural tones that we're already normally wearing. So here's this is soft northern exposure. And then I have this light. I don't know if any of you guys have these. There's these weird, like, full spectrum lights. I think my dad gave this to me, but it's a weird kind of light. Some people have them in their homes. And I just want to see, like, this is supposed to look like the sun and just create the illusion of, like, end of the day. It's pretty harsh and pretty rare that you would use this light. But what I might do, and this goes to, I can't remember who made the comment earlier, what I might do is bounce it off the wall and give a nice little fill action and reduce the contrast to my earlier shot, right? Or I might put it and aim it behind her just to give a little accent off the back there, bring out the colors a little bit more. It's a little bit of a warm fill. Again, there's no right or wrong. We're just playing with lights, moving things around. And this was just stuff I had laying around. It was already in the room. But I want to make sure I answer any questions you might have. Annabelle loves this light. Can you guys tell by the look on her face? Brad, were there more questions? I want to make sure I take your time for questions.
Yes. What is rim lighting?
Yeah, I mean, rim lighting is another way of saying a hair light.
Yeah.
Because it gives them that rim around the back.
Yep.
The biggest lights I think of are, your key is your main source of illumination. Your fill reduces contrast. So again, I could reduce contrast here with a passive fill, which, to be honest, if I'm shooting in the daylight, because this all changes at night, right? But if I'm shooting during daylight hours, this white card is going to be my best friend. It's like, oh, I like the look here, but I want to fill a little bit. All right, so look out the window. You're contemplating life, the mystery of life. And then I bring in some fill. It's not making a huge difference, but it's just softening the look a little bit. I take it away, contrasty, bring it back in, less contrasty, you know? Yeah.
Another question, John, that came in is, you know, playing around with different colors, if you want to add different color fields. And I know usually you hold the filters over it.
Oh, you're talking about gels. Yeah.
Yes.
So we gel lights. So we put what's called CTO or CTB. CTO is color temperature orange. And yeah, if you have some like pieces of plastic that have any color laying around the house, you know, put it in front of the light and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's just like bouncing it off the wall. If I bounce it off this blue wall over here, my light is going to pick up some of that green blue with it. And if you put something in front of a light, it's going to get some of that that texture with it.
Okay. Another quick rapid fire question. If you had to ballpark, how many lights are available to most filmmakers on set? What are the options?
On set? So it just depends on the budget level of the set. You know, I've been on sets where, you know, we had a lighting package of like 5 lights, and you can do a lot with 5 lights. But when you get into bigger spaces, it's counterintuitive, but shooting outdoors is hardest because you're fighting the sunlight. So when you're trying to light outdoors, you need a lot of equipment, or you need grip equipment. It's the opposite of lighting. It's like that white card. Also lighting outdoors at night, if you're shooting like down an alley and you need to light down a street. You know, I've seen big movies with hundreds of lights, literally like lighting every doorway down, well, 2 blocks from here is Broadway, and it's, you know, Transformers is going to come up there and light the street, and there's going to be a crew of 100 people and they'll light for the entire day, and they'll shoot at night. So they're spent 12 hours rigging lights for a 12-hour shoot overnight. So, I mean, there's really like, it's a really hard question to answer. Most guys will tell you they'll try and get whatever tools they need for the job. So if you know the script and you know the location, you get appropriate stuff.
Great.
And we do have, just to go off your color thing, we do have lights with color now. Annabelle wanted to show off her lights.
Yeah.
She just got these, and this is another option for those of you that are interested in the kind of DIY home style lighting. She put them in her fan, but we bought these. They're called Rgb LEDs, so they have the ability to shift color. And you can buy these for, it's a little bit more money, but they still were only like $20 at Lowe's. We picked them up the other day. Can you turn them on?
Yeah.
All right, let me switch around here so you can see, but you might have even seen the blue glow in my eye. So what's fun about these is in the daylight, they're not doing a ton in terms of fighting or lighting up the room because they're fighting the daylight. But you can just see how flexible that would be and how nice it is to have. And these are just regular bulbs. I could take these bulbs out and go plug them into those same lighting fixtures I was using, that clamp light and that work light.
Wow.
And I can control these with an iPad. I mean, she's just using an iPad.
You can
Nice.
make like billions of different colors, like
Oh.
any color you want.
And you can dim them too, right? Can you dim it down?
Yeah, there's tunable. which you
So
can
just
tune
bring it down for them. So,
Oh, sorry.
and you can switch it back to normal light. I mean, we're really in kind of a,
Look at this is dimming.
all right.
I can, like, make
Yep, we can dim them all the way down.
Or I can just make them lighter and just bring them up.
Perfect. Thank you for
Awesome.
sharing.
Yeah, thank
So,
you.
so that's a really exciting that's the newest kind of movement in lighting is we've got RGB lights. So we can change the color temperature between warm and cool. And then we can also pick any color shade and then we can dim them and we can do it remotely. I mean, this stuff that would be like magic when I was going to film school, you know? And you can buy those at home now, or we have professional ones at the school that are very big and powerful. Each one is like 4 feet long,
Mhm.
and puts out a lot of power. So
Awesome. And that kind of ties into this question from Colt. A lot of times students want to make scary movies. What are your, spooky lighting, he put it. How do you kind of pull off that eerie feel?
well, right now, I mean, to kind of build off of that, what's really popular is to have kind of like weird colors at night. Blue has always been a color that we've associated with nighttime. So one of the misconceptions that students make is that, well, I'm shooting outdoors in the woods. It's supposed to be dark. I shouldn't light it. No, you should light it, but you should get lights far away behind the trees and then pump them through the trees so everything's in silhouette. And oftentimes what they'll do is add like blue light. The other thing is to put lights underneath people so they're at night, but 90% of the time in our life, light comes from above or it comes from the side. At night, when we have flashlights and campfires and other things, light comes off the ground and below us. If you want somebody to look creepy, light them from below. That's like old school, like put a flashlight under your face. But then what I like to do is give them like a blue look or maybe a green or red, something kind of off. And then we call it, so if I've got a backlight, that's hitting my hair, move that just around to the side, just so you can see like part of their face. Let me see if I can create a silhouette here with this light coming in. Yeah. So like, you see how like you can see me, but you can't see me, that sort of look.
That is spooky.
That's and this is where actually in post-production, you can bring lights down. That's a good general rule. If you're going to fix stuff in post, you can bring stuff down, but you can't bring it up. If you start to bring it up, it generally falls apart, but you can bring it down. So what I could do is I could take this stuff outside right now and I could bring that down, but you'd still have this, call this a 3/4 light, right? It's coming on my face, but it's not lighting my eyes. Anytime you don't see people's eyes, that's also pretty creepy, right? We like to see people's eyes. So anyways.
Love it.
Any other questions?
There was one more from Dorian, and then we'll wrap up. So if there are any final ones, put it in the chat box. She had a question about, a lot of times you see like a foil card. I know you were using a white card, but sometimes you see the metallic cards people use. Is that for the same thing to bounce light?
Yeah, and I actually went looking for one of those today. My van's in the shop,
yeah.
But I have, sometimes people use them to like reflect heat out of their car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can use that. It's just a little bit shinier, more reflective bounce. It's generally speaking, the more reflective the light is, the less attractive it is. So if it's if it's a really hard light, it looks like lighting. And if it's a white card, it's really soft and looks really more attractive. It fills in shadows. So we use the metallic ones less. Bounce boards would be another word for them. But I can tell you that I did a photo shoot for the city of Chicago a few years back, and we were running and gunning all over the streets. And I had a small crew, like 5 people, and it was for like traffic safety. And we didn't have a generator. We weren't going to haul lights around downtown Chicago. It just wasn't in our budget. So instead, what we did was we used those hard-edged metallic bounce cards, and we had professional ones called bounce boards. You could put them in stands, But I had 2 guys, and they each had one, and that was their job. They were like moving light stands. So it was a bright sunny day. They would move around. I'd be like, go stand over there outside of my frame and bounce the light so it gives them that nice edge. Or I need you to fill the front of them, because the sunlight was, again, our key light was the sun. So we were using these to do other things like edge and fill, and it was very effective. I think those, that photography campaign looks great, and no lights involved. We were still lighting, we just weren't using lights.
Love it.
So,
this was awesome. Probably one of my favorite sessions so far. I mean, the fact that it's all at home. John, you wouldn't be a teacher if you didn't do this. If you had to assign homework, what would it be? Look at windows in your house? Look at just home stuff? What?
I did. I mean, this semester I taught cinematography, and they had to do, I used photography as a way to really train your eye for lighting and exposure, and they had to do at-home assignment. Like, you have to use what's in your house and what you can see from your window, and that was one of them. And the other one was you can go outside, but you have to stay in your neighborhood. You have to think about the time of day. You have to think about whether it's a sunny day or a cloudy day. Think about the time of day. Do you want to go at magic hour, right when the sun's going down, right when it's coming up in the middle of the day? All of these things are factors. So yeah, it's fun, guys. I mean, obviously I like lighting.
Well, guys, let's thank John. For those of you in Chicago, you'll see him on campus, but even if you're in LA, you will still see him at some point. Round of applause to you. And tomorrow we're having an acting workshop with one of the faculty members from our Los Angeles campus. So please come. And could we please thank John's better half? Without you, Annabelle, we wouldn't have been able to do this. So thank you so much. Let's give her a round of applause.
Hey, thanks, guys. It was so nice to virtually meet you, and hopefully I'll see you soon. One way or another, stay in touch, reach out if you need something, all right?
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. See you guys.